Welcome back to another Pretty Little Liars video essay. We've been absolutely steamrolling through this series and I'm so excited to see what the future holds with my channel and other commentary type videos I'll be doing. But today I really want to talk about Alison Dilaurentis, her fall from grace, the death of such an iconic character, her redemption arc, and how the hell all of this happened. She's the perfect villain who wreaked havoc upon everyone she came across, and then one day the writing turned her into a completely different person. I have to credit the title of this video to Juliet Coalton because I was asking you guys which titles you thought were good and that was the one I just had to pick, but I had so many hilarious and honestly incredible titles from you guys. Now, Pretty Little Liars is a series around a group of 4 girls whose friend Alison goes missing, and so they're haunted by this mysterious stalker who seems to know all their secrets and will sign off with the letter A. So all the girls are thinking, is this someone obsessed with our dead friend Alison? Is this someone pretending to be her? So they're like, wait, what is this? All roads go back to Alison. She was such a significant and relevant, meaningful character, and you were sure that no matter what happened, somehow Alison would have a tie to it. She knew so many people, she'd wronged so many people that even in the 7th season, I was thinking surely they'll somehow bring this back to Alison, right? Because that's how it should be. Today I'm going to talk about her failed redemption arc, what I personally would have done with her character instead, the lack of payoff, and how they screwed it up from the original books and the way the original books turned out. So I might get ranty at points, I might get heated. I've done other character analysis stuff on the show before and covered other things to do with the show, so I will link those videos and the playlist down in the description. Before we talk about exactly how it happened throughout the show, how her redemption arc happened and the different stages that led up to it, I want to talk about why it's a problem for me in the first place. Before any people can be confused as to why I'm saying this, I want to address why it's a problem. First of all, it seems like almost a rushed decision, as in maybe so many fans were pressurizing the writers saying, we love Emerson, we love Emily and Alison, that the writers thought, well, we need to give Emily a love interest, and so maybe if we make Alison turn good in the end, she and Emily can be together and then it will be perfect, which is a real problem because that's what happens at the end, they end up together. Additionally, the show sets it up in the beginning like she's not just a mean girl, she's going to be something really significant and she's going to do a lot of really bad things. You need to watch your back with her, when suddenly she's not a threat at all in the end and she's actually friends with the girls and hugging them in the finale. It doesn't feel right. She was never one of them to me. She was never really one of the group. She was the damaging part of the group, the little weed that needed to be cut out, you know? I also can't help but wonder if it was due to the actress gaining weight that maybe they decided to make her so nice and such a goody two-shoes at the end, because the Alison before was very seductive. She was a very precocious child and it was quite irritating that she thought she was all that. And then when the actress gained weight, maybe they thought, oh, a girl who's bigger can't be the queen bee confident leader of the group, or she can't be as provocative like all the boys want her, so we have to make her this suburban housewife, because she almost seems shy and timid around her love interests like Lorenzo and Dr. Rollins. And there are ways to do redemption arcs right where you keep the heart of the character there and they're still recognizable, but when she's interacting with them, she's so shy, like, I just want you to take me out to a movie and hold my hand. It's like, Alison? Is that you? Alison would never say that. She'd just strut up to them and be like, hey, we're going out for lunch tomorrow, okay? Whether you like it or not. She'd be really direct, and this Alison's like, oh, you like me? Thanks. Oh, stop. And she's so easily manipulated. Like, let's get married. The Alison I knew didn't seem to want to get married. She was kind of wild, and now she's like, I just want to have my kids and be a good mum. I was like, this is so, not that there's anything wrong with that, but that is not the Alison I know. That's maybe an Emily Emily thing to do. She became too much like Emily by the end. It really annoyed me. It really bugged me. Like, no. Maybe they thought, oh, she can't be the meanie bullying Hannah about her weight if she's bigger herself or something. But like, who cares? Figure that stuff out. You can still make her mean, and you can still make her the queen bee of the group and a manipulator. She was diagnosed, the actress, with an ovary syndrome, a hormonal imbalance with symptoms including irregular periods, potential infertility, and weight gain. And she said, I didn't know what was happening to me. So during that time when I was trying to figure it out on my own, it was publicized and I was on a TV show. So it was documented every week.
It's a natural human reaction to ask questions and to assume. I think it's a tendency that, you know, everybody kind of has to work on, but that is the natural reaction. Well, she must be pregnant. Well, the only reason that she's gaining weight is because she's not eating well. Look at where she started. When she first started in the show, she was so skinny. Look at her now. She's the fat one on the show. I mean, like it goes on and it goes on and it goes on. And it always comes back to not understanding, not being accepting, no toleration, and insecurity, and seeing themselves in somebody else, and someone else being the punching bag.
Anyway, at the beginning, she is genuinely terrifying. She's a true mystery, and she enjoys being a mystery. She likes not telling people stuff because she loves being the talk of the town and not just sharing everything about herself. I'm not saying she's scary, by the way, but her friends found her scary. I actually didn't find the actress that scary in the flashbacks. I was more rolling my eyes like, come on, girl, you're so annoying. I don't care, because I could see how the girls were reacting to her, and I saw the damage and the havoc she was wrecking. So yes, maybe she has the perception of being a bit cringy or a little bit overly confident or something, to the point you're like, ugh. She behaves like so many spoiled teenage girls do, who think they're all that and think they're so cool and come up with their clique nicknames, you know. So she was really good in that sense and causing genuine problems for people. So in many ways, no matter what people say, I think she was scary, because look at her actions, look at the people she's affected, the knock-on consequences of her actions, her blackmailing grown adults, two of which were parents of her best friends. She has a lot of guts, and someone like that is someone you should be wary of, and it seems foolish to underestimate her because she's so young. People are still thinking about her, and when you bring her up, people have an actual reaction like, ooh, don't go there, don't talk about Alison. And she was just so powerful and so amazing as a villain, because you could see how, even though she's meant to be dead, she has an influence over people. By the end, she has turned into an almost irrelevant background character who's one of Emily's love interests rather than the core of the show, and she has the least amount of personality compared to the other girls, and the least significant stuff isn't really caused by her or attached to her. It's so incredibly jarring and confusing, and makes me feel like I'm watching two separate shows, like seasons 1 to 4 and then 5 to 7 are different, because it just isn't good to build up something like that and drop it. It's like the writers didn't know what a gem they had. I hear people saying, it's normal she changes. Why is everyone so shocked she changes? Kids change. It's like, no, she wasn't just a kid making ordinary mistakes, going through a rough patch, maybe learning and growing. I mean, yes, it's possible. I mean, I've heard some crazy stories from people turning their lives around, but she was so young and exhibiting such worrying, manipulative tendencies. It's not like they showed her as an anti-hero at the end who uses her evil manipulative abilities to help the girls, or she had a redemption arc but she kept all of her qualities that make her her, that make her so awesome. No, she just lost everything and had the personality of white bread. And what I mean is, earlier on she doesn't really whinge much about stuff unless she's trying to manipulate you or pull you in, but honestly season 4 onwards, it's like she's whinging about stuff a lot and she's crying about stuff. And although she did go through some traumatizing experiences, it was like she was just giving up and really having a hard time and defeated. Whereas the original Alison, what was she? She was cocky, right? At the end, she actually seems quite insecure, which is different to the Alison I knew. The old Alison was manipulative and deceptive. She does have some of those qualities later, but they're quite toned down, and somehow she doesn't give the effect of being someone really useful for the girls who could help them in some way. It's not like she was talking to people like Jenna and going and documenting everything they did and logging it and blackmailing them like she used to. She just lost all those skills of manipulation abilities and using people's secrets against them. And also she stopped pathologically lying. Ezra said lying was her oxygen, and I thought she was like a compulsive liar, and I always got that vibe she could not stop lying about stuff, and that's something often you don't just grow out of. You need serious help to unlearn those habits, but by the end she's not really pathologically lying. I mean, she's quite honest, really. Again, huge chunks of her personality completely disappeared, right? Like, she's meant to be ruthless in the beginning, cutthroat, we're doing it my way, I don't care who gets hurt, but then when she's dealing with A, she's quite hesitant. She's like, I don't know, guys, we've got to be careful. When Archer betrays her, yeah, she's kind of angry, but she's more in sort of the upset, I thought we were happy together, how did I miss this state, which just, again, does not scream Alison to me. Alison would be like, how dare he, you know, I'm going to destroy his life. Just, it doesn't work. She was known as very kind of popular in the earlier seasons. That was a big thing. She was always saying to Spencer, I want to go out partying now. She'd be literally hanging out with Spencer, and then she'd get her stuff and be like, bye, not telling her, and just leave. Again, in the later seasons, it's not like she's this socialite and she's always going to parties and she's still mingling with people and blah, blah, blah. And she, again, lost that later on. Not everybody needs a redemption arc. Some people just don't change. In fact, a lot of people don't change much throughout their life or don't know how to. Additionally, it's like they thought, we can either make her a villain or we can make her someone you sympathize for and feel sorry for her, not realizing you can do both. I'm all for having bad things happen to Alison and for having her be someone we actually feel bad for. In fact, I would encourage getting us to understand how she became the way she was. She was still having these relationships as a teenager with these men that must really screw you up mentally, considering how young she was at the time and how much older they are and how much more they know about the world. Wilden, Ian, Ezra, and I would encourage getting more education about why was she drawn to these kinds of relationships. Did she not see it wasn't okay? What the hell was going on with Ian? That was creepy. What was going on with Wilden? She thought she was pregnant, didn't she? Oh my god. And what was going on in her family life? Because yeah, her parents were bad, but lots of people have bad parents. Most people have parents that can't give them even 90% of what they need. So that's not an excuse for her becoming as messed up as she was, because there weren't any signs of severe neglect or abuse or anything. So what was going on? There was actually something implied a few times. I remember one time she went over to Spencer's house really emotional about something. She was annoyed about Jason having his friends over or something, and I thought something had happened with the NAT club and maybe Jason's friends forcing themselves on her, because it was implied there could be some kind of motive for her being or being a bad person linked to that. Like, she was so sick of being the victim in every situation, being the disempowered one and not having any control, so she starts doing nasty things as a way of feeling like she has some kind of control. My final problem with her redemption arc is it's not even executed or delivered well, because it's like the writers weren't quite sure which direction they were going with or what their end goal was for Alison, and it comes through. I've got my Who Should Have Been AD theory video, and I'll link that down in the description because you should watch it. It may shock you. So now let's talk about seasons 1 and 2 and what we learned about Alison in that time. Alison was the queen bee at her school, the most popular girl at her school, but she would use your secrets against you, as it's said many, many times, and she would find your weakness and keep using it to make you uncomfortable and to manipulate you. Chose and selected each of her friends based on what she thought they could give her and if they would work for her or not. She didn't just randomly become their friends because she thought they'd like her. No, she did it intentionally, which is really creepy when you think about it, and that's not a normal thing, again, for a 15-year-old girl to be doing when she became friends with them. So with Emily, she would use Emily's feelings for her against her, but kind of string her along sometimes by flirting with her and making her feel special, like, oh, I got the snow globe for you, Emily, having little side chats with her, and you're my favorite. But I always wondered, does she actually, because everyone was saying, oh, that's so sweet, see, she does care, but I was like, no, she's just a traditional textbook manipulator. So she's probably just saying that to make Emily feel all good about herself and like she's someone special, you know? It doesn't really mean anything. Clearly she doesn't care that much about Emily, or she wouldn't be constantly weaponizing Emily's feelings for her against her and making her feel so guilty about being a lesbian. You just would not do that. So I was not a big fan of that. Then with Aria, it's like she used Aria's sensitivity against her, I guess, wanted to bring out Aria's dark side more and make Aria become a bad person like her and get involved in stuff rather than letting Aria make her own decisions. And then with Spencer, it was like she was threatened by Spencer and didn't like that Spencer saw her for who she truly was. It made her very uncomfortable. And I think Alison's quite a jealous person, and I do believe that she was jealous of Spencer. And then when it came to Hannah, she was the harshest on Hannah. Sometimes she tried to seem kind, like, I'm helping you, Hannah, I'm giving you good advice, but yet the stuff she was promoting and telling Hannah to do was really toxic. Throughout all the flashbacks we see of Alison throughout the seasons before she comes back, we learn that she pushed that girl down the stairs at the frat party because I think she was jealous that Ian was flirting with the girl. And she says a lot of creepy stuff like, I only kill when I need food or when I'm bored, writing to Paige letters pretending to be Emily, and then when Paige wrote a letter back, she'd taken the letter to try and humiliate Paige and use it against her. Stuff like that where you're like, wow, this girl's actually cruel. And some of the nicknames she'd come up with, like calling Paige pigskin, were just really nasty.
I love it because she has so many layers. Nice, mean, manipulative, seductive, all these different layers. And as an actress, it's so much fun to like dig your teeth into it.
But I was hoping that after the time jump, she'd come back as an evil girl, but in a more mature, premeditated and subtle way, like maybe doing more stuff behind your back rather than verbally saying, I'm so cool, I'm so evil. But that's something that happens naturally as you get older, right? Because I had a few people saying it would have been so lame if Alison stayed a bully as she got older because that's just so cringy, like wouldn't she have grown out of it? But it's like, have you not seen adult bullies? There are loads of them. Rather than being a cringy, over-the-top kid bully who doesn't really know what she's doing, she would become a much scarier adult bully who's still doing nasty things but maybe is trying to find ways to cover it up, and maybe she's so good at manipulation at that point. A lot of people actually think she's really nice and are shocked when they learn that a lot of people don't like her, because earlier on pretty much everyone's scared of her, but it would have been cool as she got older to realize that she was really good at tricking people into liking her and tricking people into thinking she was really nice. You know, she bullies people to the point they develop mental illnesses. She blinded Jenna, and she was even trying to cheat Jason out of an inheritance from a will or something really messed up as well. And she was much more scary and enticing when we only saw snippets of her through flashbacks and some video files, because you didn't know everything about her, but all you knew was that she had a lot of power. And it was kind of cool to see the memories of her and how the girls were still trying to get their shit together even though she was gone and reform their identities. I still wanted way more scenes and focus on that. The girls going, wait, no, that's not my hobby, that's one Alison pushed me into having, or I don't even know who I am anymore because everything I did was to please Alison, and who am I without Alison? She formed me so much, and stuff like that where you can see they had a really overly attached, codependent fixation on making Alison like them, and then when she's gone they're like, what am I left with? I really love too the flashbacks because it makes you question, wait, is Alison actually this mean? Or is she a lot nicer? Or is she way meaner than the girls are letting on? Because the flashbacks are memories from the girls, so memories are flawed and not accurate. So you're wondering, when Alison does come back, is she going to be the same as the girl in the flashbacks? Or are the girls unreliable narrators? And are they remembering wrong? And I do feel that the show missed a huge opportunity to incorporate more faulty memories, not remembering stuff right.
Sometimes I wish I could hit the pause button, maybe rewind a little bit, figure it all out. Allie never worried about things like that. She was always moving. She'd never tell you where she was taking you. She always wanted to surprise you.
The girls' memories seem to be quite accurate, but I wanted to see more signs that actually know they'd missed out huge chunks of really important information. Backup, who kind of agrees with me, said, I think Alison being alive had so much potential for the excitement of the show because she was near but also inaccessible and mysterious at the same time. She had so much dirt on all the characters like the Liars, Mona, Paige, Lucas, Melissa, Wilden. What would have been really interesting would be to use her as a tool to expose all the characters as unreliable narrators. Maybe the girls weren't as sympathetic and naive as the flashbacks made them seem, so maybe they're kind of mean. Maybe their memories were all taken out of context, or maybe there was a reason she treated them the way she did. Why did she recruit each of them in the first place? Or the subtle comments Alison used to make, e.g., there's a reason she picked Aria, maybe because Aria was supposed to be the second A. Emily is the only one who truly understands her, maybe because Emily was secretly really manipulative, and how the girls combined knew more than they were letting on about that night, because maybe they all had motive to kill Ali. All these questions could have been built upon from season 4 onwards, so that the audience is left questioning everyone in Rosewood. Alison going rogue and revealing things the girls hid from each other could mean that any of the 4 are now suspect. That's such a good idea because it was way too easy. Like, yeah, Alison's pretty mean, the girls are pretty nice, that's it. I know in the books they're way more flawed, so why not kind of follow that path? I'm not saying make them mean, but have them make lots of mistakes they're too embarrassed to want to share, or maybe they've got stuff they were involved in they've pushed into the back of their subconscious because they don't want to deal with that stuff. That would bring in way more good content and cool scenes for the show. In season 3, Cece Drake is introduced and she's very similar to Alison in a lot of ways, and they look a bit similar. She has a few similar behavioral traits and the girls are a bit suspicious of that. We also find out that Cece and Alison were best friends years prior, which again is a little suspicious about Alison's character, that she didn't say that she had this whole best friend none of them knew about. It makes you realize how little you know about Alison. Even Alison's Vivian Darkbloom persona, that was really morbid to me, and again not normal for a 15-16-year-old. This idea of this girl dressing up with a dark wig and a coat and calling herself something different, that's not normal. What was up with that? Why was she trying to take on different identities? During a fire, the girls are saved by Redcoat and they're thinking it actually was Alison that saved them because they're trying to figure out the identity of this person in the red coat. In season 4, that's when the girls know Alison's alive during a Ravenswood episode, and she's trying to talk to Emily specifically more privately, but there are points where she doesn't want all of them there because I don't even know, why would she not want them there? For ages she's been sneaking in and visiting them, rescuing them. Then when they know it's her, that she's alive, they're going to have so many questions, they're going to want to talk to her, and then she's annoyed. Like, she was so angry at Emily when Emily and Spencer appeared to talk to her, and she was like, no, I just wanted to talk to you, Emily. It's like, but we're your friends, we want to talk to you, what do you mean? And of course you were setting it up for that to happen because you were giving them hints you were alive, so that was really weird. Sasha, who plays her, confirmed that Alison's personality has changed. She has to figure out who she is. She's been hiding for so long and she's a victim now. Alison's a totally different person, so to see the way they treat her is going to be very interesting, and to see the way that she gets affected by it is also going to be very interesting. I guess the idea here is that the 2 years she was gone were so traumatizing it actually drastically changed her personality. The problem with that, if that's true, is we didn't get to see these 2 years. We didn't even get any flashbacks. So how are we meant to root for her and think that this redemption arc totally makes sense considering how messed up she was beforehand if we don't even get to see what happened to her in the 2 years and the details we do get are very limited? I knew one thing happened with Cyrus Petrillo stabbing her in the leg or cutting her in the leg or something, and that was really scary and she seems traumatized by it, but that's not enough for me to understand that her character is fundamentally different than it was before. And I have a feeling the writers were kind of expecting us to just assume, oh yeah, she will have changed in the 2 years because it was so hard for her, but the rest of us were curious about knowing what she's been doing the whole time. What the hell has she been doing with her time? How did she have money? Who was she talking to? What was her day-to-day routine like? I want those details and it should be explained. It's just one big grey blur. When she does come back and talk to them in the end of season 4, it's like they're just so happy to have their friend back and so relieved relieved, but why would you be after everything she put you through? Earlier, a lot of their storylines were centered on the girls realizing they needed to grow out of Alison and she wasn't that great a friend. In some ways, I really liked season 4 and season 5A, because even though Alison was a little all over the place and she was still, you know, crying quite a lot and complaining quite a lot or saying things were hard, understandably, the reason I didn't mind is because things have been hard. She's not just complaining for no reason. Things were genuinely difficult. And also, just because she'd been going through a rough time didn't mean she couldn't be manipulative. And even though, yes, she was saying, oh, this was so hard and I was gone for 2 years and blah, 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 you could still be second guessing, wait, is she manipulating? Is she lying? Is she just making all of this up? Is this one big masterful game to go and stalk the girls? Has she been harassing them this whole time and pretending she hasn't been? So it doesn't matter that she's come back into the show and she's telling them what happened to her in the night she disappeared in season 4. Those scenes are good to watch because you're thinking, is this an act? And what really bugs me is that in all those scenes she's being genuine. You're really hoping that it is like an act and she's being a little manipulative and trying to make herself out to be nice, but at the end you find out no, she really is just meant to be this nice girl who was misunderstood and really has changed. But I don't buy it. I would have loved to know at the end of season 7 that the whole time she'd been doing this weird puppet game, pretending to fit in with them when actually she had some greater goal in mind. That sounds way more like the sort of thing Alison would do. Anyway, in season 4 I liked it because you weren't sure whether you could fully trust Alison or not. So she's telling them the story of what happened when she disappeared that night, and you're thinking, are you making this all up? Is this the truth? Because you never know with Alison whether or not you can trust her motives, and it was still so fresh at this point, her returning. You're excited to see what the writers do with it and which direction you take her character, and you're hoping, of course, because it's Alison, that it's one big manipulation puppet game and they're all just chess pieces she's maneuvering in one big wider game, and you're really excited to see what will happen with that. And actually I really liked season 4 too because of that film noir episode they have. The film noir episode was partly in Spencer's head, or maybe completely in Spencer's head, but it does show a lot about the characters and progress the story and show, I mean, it was pretty accurate in the sense that you could see Arya interacting with Ezra. It was all stuff that made sense, that was logical, so you can make judgments from it. And you could see how still incredibly manipulative Alison was despite everything she'd been through. She sees the girls come in to talk to her, and rather than saying, guys, it's not safe right now, so please leave, but it's great to see you because, you know, I haven't seen you for 2 years, she's like, did anyone see you come in here? No? Then get the hell out. And being so mean to them and making these snappy comments like she doesn't even care about them. And then when she talks to Spencer, you can tell that she's trying to turn Spencer and the girls against each other and to make Spencer out to be really bad, dividing the group. So I was like, wow, she's saying to Spencer all these nasty things about Spencer, and Spencer's like, you know what, Alison, there is something you're not telling us and you're setting us up for something and I don't know what it is and I don't like it. And when Spencer said that, I loved it because I would have adored it if Alison had been coming back to share her story about what happened to her, but she had some greater goal in mind, some scheme, some revenge plot, you know, and Spencer was picking up on it. I would have loved it if you found out that in the 2 years Alison had been gone, she'd actually been maybe stalking the girls and had this huge master plan to get revenge on them. She'd been lying to them, and actually there was a whole lot of information she was intentionally not telling them. But in that film noir episode, Alison's also being very patronizing to Emily, saying the little girls finally sharpened her tongue, which shows she actually doesn't take Emily seriously, because Emily told her to stop being mean and she was mocking Emily, which again shows she has no respect for Emily at all. She thinks she's lame and a pushover. Lizzie said, I know a lot of people think she should have stayed dead, and while I can understand that sentiment, I don't necessarily agree. Alison was a character who radiated potential, the overarching mysteries which all appeared to link back to her, the downright evil lengths she'd go to when trying to get her way, and the underlying pain which made her seem human in moments of vulnerability. All of it was masterfully set up, yet none of those things were ever properly resolved. I was left with so many questions when the series ended, and most of them revolved around her. Bringing her back could have added so much flavor to the show. The liars could have been left on tenterhooks waiting with mounting anxiety for her action. Instead, she gets redeemed. Never mind whether she deserves it. It makes no sense after the multiple seasons the writers spent building her up as a villain. She was a brilliant example of a complex complex antagonist, someone cruel, flawed, and yet delightfully charismatic, who the audience could root for even as she threw the protagonists' lives into chaos. It would have made sense for her to return and not share anything, for the mysteries to remain because she was choosing to keep quiet about what she knew. Imagine the dread we would have felt as she strutted down the school hallway, completely oblivious to the reception she got. Imagine the reaction from the liars. It would have been brilliant to see her ignore them, to see them nervous as she went about her life. Imagine how Emily and Hannah would have been forced to examine the emotional scars she left them with. Those two could have had amazing arcs on their reaction to Alison's return, but we never got that. It would have been an effective way to show how broken she left them, how much healing they had to go through, and how at the end of the day they were expendable to her. Yeah, like dispensable. She doesn't care, and maybe they realize, oh my god, she never cared about us, or something like that, something really clever. And then maybe she comes back to them after a while and she's like, let's be friends now, and they're like, okay, I guess. And then she starts manipulating them, and then they're falling back into the same old patterns, but then she seems to have genuinely changed, and you're like, oh my god, she's friends with us now, she's being nice to us now, and things are good. Maybe you think, okay, she has changed now, she has a good redemption arc, but then boom, right at the end you find out she was A the whole time. It would have been brilliant. And I know Alison as A might be a bit obvious, but I was thinking, what are her motivations? Because her motivations could be really interesting. And actually, definitely watch the video I told you about who I would have chosen as AD, because I said she should have been paired with Aria, which is good because you're making Alison one of the ADs, which means that it's kind of inevitable. Like, yes, good writing, it makes sense. And then the shocking part of it could be the fact that Aria was also in on it as AD. So you'd be like, wait, there's two of them? And that could have been really cool. So please watch that video. Just go comment over there, watch it, talk about it, because I break down all the signs, all the subtle clues, and the little things people haven't talked about, so you have to go watch it. But anyway, if Alison had stayed a villain, if she was AD, or just a mean person in general, I was thinking, what could her motives be? Or like, what could some of the underlying motives be? One of them I thought about was actually her vanity. In the film noir episode, there's this huge painting of her in the wall, immortalized, and she's like, wow, it actually makes me angry to look at this painting because it will look like that forever, and I'll age and not look as good. And she has this obsession with mortality. Like, she then says, it's immortality, my darlings. And earlier in the show, she'd said, it's immortality, my darlings, and she'd said how she wanted to die young so she'd look good forever. So she's actually very vain and very focused on her appearance. Then she says, that's why it's smart to disappear. You'll always be the girl in the painting. When she said that, it gave me Gone Girl vibes. It really freaked me out, and I had like chills. It made me think differently about her disappearance and her behavior. The fact that she's like, oh, I wish I could disappear every day, and she just loves the attention. Another reason why she might make sense as a villain is because she loves playing games with people. She's calling the girls mine and her puppets and I own you. She thinks they're possessions. She loves being in control, and there are multiple scenes like in the Halloween episode, the pumpkin scene with Hannah, and the pilot episode where you can see she loves scaring people, shocking them, jump scares. She loves taking people by surprise, and she loves doing things to scare the girls so they think she's in trouble so she can test their loyalty. And it made me realize she definitely should have been AD, or one of the ADs, because how cool would it have been if she was gone for 2 years or 3 years, she came back, they were like, where the hell were you? And at the end you find out the only reason she disappeared wasn't because she was being stalked, wasn't because anything bad had happened to her. It was just because she thought, hey, if I disappeared off the face of the earth tomorrow, how would my friends react? Because she was that nuts. And then she disappeared and saw, I don't like their reaction. They're not sad enough. They're not grieving me enough. And so she went full revenge mode in them over something as ridiculous as them not being her puppets anymore. And then it would have made perfect sense for her to kidnap them and take them to the dollhouse and try and control their every move. Imagine if the dollhouse was dragged out for like a whole season. And another potential motive is actually to do with men and dating, because we know she was screwed over by these older guys, and maybe then when she met Ezra, she thought, oh, he's different, but then she got so jealous when he moved on and started dating Aria right after she disappeared, and then he didn't tell Aria that he knew and dated Alison, and then said he wanted to marry Aria and was dating her, and then he was writing a book capitalizing off Alison's disappearance. Alison should have been way more angry about that too. Could you imagine her then going going full revenge mode and being AD over that. I could totally imagine that. Also, when you consider the fact that Alison's very possessive, and I could totally imagine her in her weird, twisted ways, getting so pissed off that Arya's trying to take her man, being like, how dare you? And that Spencer had tried to take Ian, because I remember one scene where she was talking to Spencer after Spencer kissed Ian, and she was like, you better not have enjoyed kissing him because that makes you a skank. Let's say Wilden was actually creepy and had an interest in Hannah. Maybe that's another thing for Alison to be jealous of. What if you found out that actually Alison and Ren had a thing we didn't know about? Then you could understand her being angry at Spencer, thinking Spencer was always taking her men or something. Especially in the film noir episode, she's talking to Spencer, and Spencer's annoyed because she knew that Ezra was dodgy, and she knew that Alison knew Ezra was dodgy and had this whole history with him. And Spencer's like, Alison, why aren't you going and telling Arya all this dodgy stuff you know about Ezra? You have a responsibility to do that. And she could not understand why Alison wouldn't let Arya know that she'd actually dated Ezra and Ezra was lying to Arya. Alison is not protecting Arya, right? She's not being there for her as a friend. This is around season 4, right before Alison comes back to, and she's meant to be all nice, but it doesn't make sense when you think about the fact that around the Freefall episodes, when you do see her even in Spencer's dream, she's still being so mean. So it's like, how could she change that much? And then Alison says, no woman has ever been able to warn another woman about a man. Instead of doing these ideas I've just presented to you as potential motives, instead none of that happens. And actually, when she sees Ezra again, she barely has scenes with him or seems to care, even though, dude, he literally lied to Arya saying that he didn't know you, and he tried to write a book profiting off your disappearance. Shouldn't you be a little bit angry and vengeful? Alison was known for being vengeful, but she didn't even seem to care that much. Anyway, the season ends when Alison sits down with her friends to explain everything that happened to her 2 years earlier. I didn't quite get the motive for Alison hiding away for 2 years just because she was being stalked, and the fact that her mum was protecting the person who'd tried to kill Alison, because maybe her dad wouldn't have minded. Surely you could just tell the police and maybe go and live with your dad if you don't feel safe with your mum. I don't know, it was just a little bit sketchy. And also the whole, why was Bethany Young wearing the same top as Alison that night was just a little weird. And why would the police be so set on, we found a body, Alison died, when it was Bethany Young's body? Are they stupid? In this finale of season 4, even though in all the flashbacks we saw earlier of Alison, she was really mean, and in the scenes earlier when Alison was interacting with the girls, she'd been really mean, like, guys, get out of here, you need to go, you can't come and talk to me. But suddenly in the finale, she's being all emotional, she seems quite nice, and she's crying about how her mum tried to bury her alive, which obviously builds sympathy for her character, how someone tried to kill her and her mum was protecting that person rather than Alison. So again, we're meant to feel bad for Alison, but the problem is that this is a snowball effect later. This is the first of many events where later down the road the show just tries to throw tragedy on Alison in order to make us feel bad for her and forgive her for all the terrible stuff she's done. In season 5, again, Alison is suddenly the victim, and I was thinking it's fine, it's cool they're making her out to be the victim, because that's what these manipulators do, these people with these serious personality deficits, is that they will manipulate you, pre-planned all of that to happen and made sure it would happen so they'd look like the victim. So I was waiting for her to be the big bad guy and boom, it's all been an act, but when that doesn't happen, all you're left with is Alison being like, ooh, boo-hoo, the whole time. So Jessica, her mum died, and she was sent a video of her mum being buried. At points her dad's being really mean and harsh on her, and A snuck into Alison's house and tried to strangle her with her own scarf, and Emily rushes in like, Alison, oh my god, are you okay? And then Alison's saying stuff to Emily like, can I just sleep here? I don't want to be alone tonight. Or this sort of thing of like, oh my god. And to be fair, yeah, she was having a really hard time, but it's just annoying where you see how hard the show's trying to nail down on poor Alison. Oh my god. God, this is so sad. This is so lame. Alison, what happened to you? She's in the bathroom at school like, oh my god, I've got bruises on my neck. What if people notice? Oh my god, what if people start asking questions? Just so anxious. And again, not the Alison I know.
Allie's just so different. I mean, she's been so emotionally wounded, and I think it's really important to see that. So I do kind of feel like I'm playing a whole new character. She's such a victim. So, I mean, I just think that the fans are just going to love to see that whole different side, hopefully. You're kind of just trying to figure out Alison now. I think she's trying to figure out who she is. I mean, she's been hiding for so long. There's so much that's happened to her. I mean, she's a victim now. But to see how Rosebud accepts her is going to be odd. because, you know, this is a dead girl. She's been gone for a long period of time. I mean, not just that, I mean, a person that's done so many awful things and blackmailed so many people, to kind of accept her back into society is going to be interesting. Yeah, I mean, I was just about to say, I mean, the dynamic's totally going to change. I mean, the girls were always under Alison's thumb, and it was 5 of them. Now it was 4, and they've totally grown into their own people and supported each other in that way. They've been through a lot with A. And now you're introducing another character. Now it's 5 again, and Alison has totally changed. Her personality is totally different. She's been through so much, and they're finding out about that. So it's a crazy change.
Around season 5, Miss Grunwald even said to Hannah, around the time Mona was considered dead, each one feared the other because each one knew something about the other. This was when Hannah had asked a question about Alison, and it was linked to maybe Alison killing Mona because they were in this graveyard kind of setting. So when Mrs. Grunwald said that, she was linking Mona and Alison, basically saying that each girl knew something about the other. Now we know what Alison knew about Mona. She was thinking maybe that Mona was A or whatever. What did Mona know about Alison? That's never explained, but imagine if Alison was A, that would have been such a cool clue. She's lying to the cops and making her friends sign up for this lie too, without actually telling them all the information she knows and explaining her thought process. She makes up a story about her disappearance saying she was kidnapped, and this freaks the girls out and makes them think, did Alison kill her own mom? Is Alison A? And actually A was trying to sabotage and isolate Alison to make her look guilty and to make her alone, but we didn't know that at the time, so we were thinking Alison really was A, and to be honest, I loved where it was going. But the thing is, the only way it will have a payoff and actually keep that kind of impact is if you have it be true. If you're like, yep, it actually is true, but instead they're like, no guys, Alison was set up, she's totally innocent, and that immediately ruins all of that amazing fear and tension you were building up in me, where I was thinking Alison had somehow orchestrated this entire thing. And you know, then later on I thought, oh my god, she's killed Mona. I was like, holy crap. Alison actually is annoyed at the girls at one point for not backing her up, so she pulls away from them and gets her own army of girls to team up against them, and she even hired Noel to sneak into Hannah's house and scare the shit out of Hannah's mum, thinking that the kidnapper had broken in just to try and solidify her fake story about the kidnapper. That's messed up, and no, she has not changed and she can't change if she's already like this far down the road still at season 5. And honestly, she was so all over the place in season 5. It's like the writers wanted to have their cake and eat it too. They wanted to make her mean, but also the good guy, and they couldn't quite make up a decision as to where they were actually supposed to land her, so they were really milking it, trying to do everything with her. And the result is you're like, wait, why is she being nice here and then mean here? Because then she was having this really emotional, quite genuine connection with Emily, but then she's screwing the girls over, and it's like, what? She's still arrogant as well. She's thinking she's really that smart, she can outwit the police. Then by season 5B, boom, she's actually a nice person, she's being screwed over, she's misunderstood, Mona's bullying her at school, Alison's the good guy. Mona at one point was being really mean to her. She'd edited something to make it look like Alison had just gone up and slapped her across the face and called her a loser Mona. So again, poor Alison being cyberbullied. Wow. The girls are actually there for Alison's trial because they realize they were wrong and Alison is a good person. The girls are kidnapped and she's trying to help Caleb and Ezra find the girls, and she's, you know, talking to the news people saying, please help me find my friends, and she seems genuinely devastated. It's like, what changed, girl? Inform me, enlighten me, because in the earlier seasons you were more than happy to give Hannah an ED. So what changed? Earlier you did not give a crap about Spencer. Why are you suddenly like, oh my god, please help me find my friends? It's such a shame too, because they were setting her up to be such a good villain and such a backstabber. I remember this one scene in season 5A, I think, that gave me chills. It scared me so much. I was scared, you know, more than any other A scene. And it's such a simple scene. Emily's in the comfort of her home and she's texting the girls because she invited Alison to come over. They're all thinking Alison's A and they're planning like a trap or something. I don't really know what their intention was, but Emily again is being the worst spy, the worst at her job, because she's standing there with her phone beeping, texting like that and looking really scared of Alison, like jumping when Alison comes in, and then texting right in front of her. So clearly she's texting someone about Alison, and Alison can tell, and Emily's the worst at acting cool because you can tell how scared she is of Alison, and she's like, everything's fine. You know, late night shopping, last minute shopping. Oh my god, Sasha's acting was incredible. You could see Alison being like, she's lying to me. Her mum never shops at the last minute and something's going on, and she just knew. And I was like, oh my God, this is the Alison I know, the one who's on it, who's not falling for people's bullshit, who can just, is so perceptive, and she reads people like a book, and I could just see it. She knows Emily. Emily can't lie to her, you know? And then she's so clever that she turns away from Emily, facing the other way, and does this evil smile and looks really pleased with herself, pretend to look sad, and then she turns around with a sad face like, Emily, I agree, I think we should be friends again. She was literally doing a smug smile and then wipes it off her face and turns around like, let's get a cup of tea. And Emily then moves away to go and get some tea or something. And then when Emily turns back around to talk to her, Alison's there. And she's reading Emily's text messages. She's gone all the way across the room and grabbed Emily's phone. And I was like, God, this girl works fast. She knew she had to get across the room, get Emily's phone, read it, and it's exactly perfect. It's exactly the sort of thing Alison would do. And then Alison says, your mum never shops at the last minute. I see you're texting Spencer. Are you keeping A busy? I'm A, right, aren't I? Because she's so pissed off that Spencer would think she was A. But I really wished in that moment she was A and she was just manipulating Emily. And imagine if she actually was A and she was being that manipulative. She could turn the situation on its head and be like, how dare you think that? What I wish they'd done is make it that for a few seasons, Alison was playing the victim, which is very different, but instead they actually made her the victim. Huge difference. And I wish it had been the first one, because season 5B, it's like Alison was framed for a crime she did not commit. She's saying, I didn't kill Mona, you're meant to feel bad for her, the girls feel bad for her, they realized they were too harsh on her. Alison's saying, A, setting me up, trying to divide us. Female friendship is such a big theme on the show. I would have loved to see Alison playing all innocent in order to try and destroy the girls' bond. So in the beginning of season 6, Alison's trying to help the girls escape again, but then when the girls come back, you're thinking, okay, you've redeemed Alison now because you spent 5B doing that, so keep her innocent, keep her good. If you're going to do it right. Instead, Alison is still having a lot of issues. Even in season 7, she finds out about the sibling she never knew, and she's thinking the sibling might be A, but all they know is that the person's called Charles. Even though she knows the sibling has grown up to be a kidnapper and a stalker and a torturer, someone that literally attacked Alison in her living room as well. She's making these excuses for Charles that don't make sense, like, I knew that little boy, we were friends, blah, blah, blah. Even when the girls are like, hey, that's kind of insensitive because we were the ones that were kidnapped and tortured and you were hurt by this person too. They sent you a video of your mum being buried, so why are you here having sympathy? And I think the reason why Alison was having so much sympathy, because it made no sense, was because they were trying to establish her as like this empathetic person who is really hurt by how shit her family's turned out. And a lot of season 6 is spent with her trying to investigate the history of this sibling she never knew about. Again, you feel bad for her, right? Because that sucks. The Alison I knew held grudges. The Alison I knew had high standards. She did not like feeling disempowered and like she didn't know stuff. This Alison is like, well, I know I have none of the information because this A, Charles, is not giving me it, but I still like them and I want to defend them. The Alison I knew would be like, how dare Charles not communicate with me? Who is this jerk and why is he doing all this stuff to us without telling us why, without talking to me like a normal person? Screw him. But instead she's being all compassionate, and not even compassionate, she's being cowardly, she's being weirdly weak. I understand her having sympathy and because it is her sibling. Then with the A reveal, she's being quite compassionate, like, oh, that must have been really hard for you, to Cece. After learning her sister Cece's story, Alison and Jason have Charlotte institutionalized, where she undergoes intense therapy for 5 years. Alison remained in Rosewood for the length of Charlotte's recovery and fought for her to be released into her custody. She's put into this weird carer role, this all I want is love character. And then again, you're thinking, well, at least she's being nice now, I guess. But they don't even stick to that, because then she's very insensitively trying to convince the girls to try and help Charlotte to get released, as if they would want to do that. So she's being selfish. After the time jump, Alison is now a teacher. Sorry, did these writers not know her at all? Did they not know what a masterpiece they'd created? Alison would not want to be a teacher. First of all, if she really has changed, being a teacher would bring up so many traumatizing memories and reminders of the awful person she used to be. Second of all, who would allow her to be a teacher because she was such an awful person who everyone hated? And thirdly, she never even had that much of an interest in schooling and learning and academia. Then she got engaged to Archer Dunhill and she was like, oh my god, I love you so much, and was being like this old-fashioned romantic. She wasn't seducing him like the Alison I know. The Alison I knew was always looking out out for? Is someone using me? Is someone disrespecting me? With this guy, he was clearly dodgy, and she was oblivious, rose-tinted glasses, saying to Arya, marry us. It's like, no, Alison would not do that. And then she spends like season 7 being shocked that this man she knew and loved would turn out so wrong. We're meant to pity her because then Charlotte, her sister, dies, and it's clearly a murder in Alison's opinion. So again, we're meant to feel terrible for Alison, and there's so many scenes of her just moping around the house being depressed again. And then she meets Mary Drake and is trying to bond with Mary Drake, even though again Mary Drake is clearly dodgy. It's like, Alison, where did your brain cells go? Where did your perceptiveness go? You don't just lose or undo qualities like intelligence. Everyone needs to be there for her because she's being tricked, because she keeps thinking her mum's alive and Darren Wilden is alive because she's seeing their faces everywhere in these masks. Oh my god, I just realized how creepy that is. Did the show forget her and Wilden had a relationship when she was a minor? Because that would be so scary, thinking that your rapist was hovering around the place. Again, she's crying, she's thinking she's going crazy. I'm like, this is so awful. They're also simultaneously trying to show she's a bad person because the girls are seriously convinced that Alison killed her own sister Charlotte. So it's like, right, we're going back to square one, are we? Suspecting Alison. And if you really trusted Alison now and thought she was a good person, you would not dream of suspecting her of something like this, which shows again, they don't fully trust her. Alison, even though she's meant to be redeemed, isn't being a good person because she's trying to figure out who killed Charlotte, and she's assuming one of the girls was involved or knows more than they're letting on. So she's questioning them.
I heard a lot about Charlotte. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to meet her.
If what you heard was from Hannah, it's not true. She didn't know her. Not who Charlotte really was.
Side note, but I hated the way they dressed her, especially in season 7. They did not know how to dress plus-sized girls. The clothes were frumpy. She was walking around in her pug sweaters like it was cute. It was not cute. Even through the makeup, they're trying to show she's having a hard time because often she's got no makeup on or she looks really tired. Again, creating this defeated look, which I'm just not familiar with Alison. Season 7 finally, where Alison is again really properly the victim. Alison and Emily get together, which shocked me because Alison had literally married Archer, so I kind of thought she was straight, but she was just pretending to like Emily, so that was not made clear. I was like, wait, so is she bi? Was she actually into girls but pretending she wasn't? Alison is locked up by her husband in a mental institute. She's drugged. She gets forcibly impregnated. She gets shoved by A at one point when they're looking for A in the school hallway. She's targeted by Addison, and A attacked her dressed as a police officer in the comfort of Alison's own home. So again, poor Alison. At the end, Alison is with Emily looking after their babies like she's this happy girl wanting a happy family. The way she deals with Addison isn't even badass, by the way. She can't even do a confrontation properly. How sad is that? And it's like, if you're strong and you're used to, when you're younger, you know, fighting people off, scaring people, you don't suddenly lose the ability to be able to intimidate people in your 20s. In fact, you should be even more confident and self-assured. So her being so easily rattled was just off.
Alison becomes a teacher, which is not where I thought she would be. I didn't think that she was going to be there. I thought she would have been out of Rosewood, but the more I thought about it, it does make sense. She never really had the high school experience. So as much as she's, teaching students, I think she's also kind of teaching herself. I think she went through a lot of therapy, rebuild what's left of her family. Alison, you were wild and vicious at times, but it was enjoyable to see that unfold into something that ended up being much sweeter in the end. Trying to understand everything that she's been through and also understanding everything that who she is. So I think her biggest struggle is trying to kind of get used to society and what actual normal people do. So I think she's had a lot of therapy. She's become more of an actual human.
Finally, she's not even that nice in season 7. At points, she's passive-aggressive, and the way she dealt with Paige was petty, rude, and immature. Tinny Mooney said they didn't have the balls to go all in with her, and it was disappointing. Call me weird, but I love broken, unapologetic villains. They should have made her more human by explaining everything that happened to her and how it influenced her. But instead, they made her boring, had other characters say that she is good now, and expected people to buy it. She could have been one of the most iconic villains ever, so much wasted potential. And I agree. And talking about wasted potential, we need to talk about how much freaking better her storylines were in the books, because I googled this and it is actually depressing, because I would much rather have had this ending. Still would have been disappointing because I would have rather they invented something of their own, so it would take us by surprise, but hey, it still would have been really super well written, so great. Prepare yourself. In the books, Alison had a twin. Not Spencer. Alison had the twin called Courtney. If anyone should have a twin, it should be Alison. So I was like, this makes so much more sense considering how this show is structured and who the most important characters are. When I read this, it made me feel completely gutted because it makes so much sense and it's actually good writing. I initially thought in the series they were going to make Hannah and Alison twins, you know, in the show, because of how similar they looked, how a funeral director once got them mixed up, and how Hannah was trying in the 5th season to not look like Alison, how Mona was trying to get Hannah to look like Alison and dress like Alison, and also how all the twins in the thing were blonde, like in the Halloween episodes, the story Alison told of the twins and how one killed the other. It would all make so much sense, but no, they were not twins. And in the books, Alison had a twin called Courtney. They were friends when they were young, but then Alison was really jealous of Courtney because Alison was the pretty one, but Courtney was the nice one and people liked her more. By impersonating Courtney and doing crazy stuff, it actually worked, and Courtney was sent to Radley, or was it? No, it wasn't Radley. It was a different mental institution. When Courtney got back, she was so angry she wanted revenge because I don't think she actually had any mental illnesses or anything like that. Alison was mistaken for Courtney, and Alison was sent to a mental institute for, I think, 2 years. While Alison was locked away, fuming at the fact she was mistaken for Courtney and locked away, Courtney is out having fun, befriending all the girls, like, you know, Hannah. Then one day Alison manages to leave her mental institute and then she kills Courtney and tries to replace her, but I think something goes wrong where the girls are like, hey, that's not our friend, and then Alison's angry, she wants revenge on the girls, and it made a lot more sense. Alison wrote an entire diary with untrue stories about the girls torturing her while they were keeping her hostage, and then wanted to give it to the Rosewood PD so they think the girls were like kidnappers, and then Emily, I think, had to fake her own death and prove that Alison was the crazy one. So Alison is the big bad and the stalker in the entire book series, and I would have so much rather it was like that in the show because it honestly makes sense. Even if Alison wasn't A, she should have been a villain. I just want to share a few of your comments as part of my overall thoughts about her character. So one thing that really messed up Alison was how unlike herself she was after being alive. They could have given her some sort of ulterior motive because we all know that Alison is selfish. It could have been interesting to have her sort of act as a counter to Spencer. We all know that by the later seasons, Spencer was doing the brunt of the investigations because she's supposedly the smartest and low-key the leader, so the girls go along with it. But Alison's character pre-disappearance was clever and resourceful and the leader of the group. While Spencer relies on her own intelligence and intuition, Alison is an expert at manipulation, persuasion and blackmail to get info out of other people, which could be more valuable. So for them to be at odds with each other could heighten the drama of the show. Not to mention Sasha is just as talented as Troyan, so they could have had amazingly intense scenes together. Instead, it makes no sense that season 4 to 7 Alison is just sort of dumb. She's of no value to the group even though she knew so much about every character. Alison was just there like, yeah, so I'm pregnant. She's one-dimensional, predictable, and scared, doing whatever the other girls told her to. Are we seriously meant to believe this is the same girl that knowingly blinded Jenna and manipulated the girls into keeping quiet? So the fact she's able to empathize and love Cece also just makes no sense. At least with Mona, what I liked about her was how even after she stopped being A and started helping the girls, she still had A-like traits. Still a genius, still shady, still a badass. I think Alison's character was too big and powerful for the writers to handle, and her return would have dominated the show and not made it about the lies anymore, so she was reduced to a love interest for Emily even when every plot point on the show should have led back to her. I agree, maybe they were like, wait, if we keep Alison mean, she's going to literally be causing trouble in every scene she's in and it's too much for us, but who cares? That's the point, isn't it? If you're going to bring her back, do it, commit to it. And Michaela said, also Alison basically became a lost puppy, which no matter how much trauma she endured during the 2 years missing, you You don't unlearn manipulation, gaslighting, guilt tripping. After her return, she may have been more shaky, but she wouldn't have lost her capabilities. But she was so cowardly, dependent on others and dim, asking Emily before and after the time jump to babysit her, and she can't even threaten little Addison properly in the finale. Sunny said, okay, if they had to bring her back from the dead and not make Alison at least part of the A-team, then at least make her redemption arc at least vaguely convincing. She was devious. Have a storyline where she invents a secret for A to discover, to cover for what she's actually up to, whether it's a mission to investigate A or just a different secret she's hiding. Have her be a bitch who eventually becomes so fiercely loyal to her friends, she's like a cannon you can point at the enemy. Have her uncover other people's secrets or manipulate them into spilling the truth. Or given that she literally was telling both Arya and Spencer prior to her disappearance they should fess up about their secrets, have her call them out in it whenever they're doing something self-destructive A is obviously going to use against them, and realizing she can't just manipulate or threaten her way out of every situation. I'm not saying she has to be nice in the way real people are nice, TV is always a different standard, but having her feel guilty somewhat for the fact that her friends are being tortured because of something she started could be decent. Maybe develop her actual backstory, show what it was like growing up in such a privileged but dysfunctional household and being taught that lying was necessary by her mum. Show why she felt like she had to hide stuff all over the house. Show what having a brother who was literally the head of a child pornography network was like. How about show the impact on her, having been literally buried alive by her own mother? In seasons 1 to 3, she's just a flashback antagonist. She's a minor antagonist in season 4 in the best of ways, and I loved what they were doing there, because even the fact that she was just running around Ravenswood, ooh, come and find me, hide and seek, and like running away, and they all had to chase after her, just playing games with them. In the first half of season 5, she's the main antagonist, and in some senses she was actually playing the victim because she was being very mean at points, very manipulative. None of them were really trusting her. But then in season 5B, it's like, we're friends now, and then after that it's like boring, vanilla, meh. Trying to redeem her is a waste of the writer's time. It's one of the biggest mistakes they made. It's one of the most disappointing parts of the show. I just want to point out that I absolutely love this show and so many things about it. So my critique is coming from a place of love, because I could see how much better the show would be if they just improved or tweaked a few things. But I still love this show despite any mistakes or things they may have overlooked. And on my channel, I do tend to talk about the things that could be improved and stuff I would have changed, but that's not because I dislike the show, it's just because I like talking about ways it could be made even better. But there are lots of redeeming qualities with Pretty Little Lies. I'm glad I can do these videos because it gives me a chance to process all of the hardships PLL put us through. I think we all need group therapy if we grew up watching the show, when you think about the facts that you could have written it better yourself. But let me know what you think in the comments. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, because it really helps me out, and I will see you guys for my next video.